The year is 1260. The world is ending. At least, that is how it feels to the people of the Middle East. A shadow has fallen across the earth, stretching from the steppes of Mongolia to the shores of the Mediterranean. It is a shadow of fire and blood, cast by an unstoppable force that has erased empires, burned cities, and slaughtered millions. They are the Mongols, the horse lords, the scourge of God. Picture the scene in Cairo. The air is thick with panic. Refugees are flooding the streets, telling stories that sound like the nightmares of a madman. They speak of a city called Baghdad, the jewel of the world, the center of science, art, and faith for 5 centuries. They say it is gone. They say the Tigris River ran black with the ink of drowned books and then red with the blood of its citizens. They say the Caliph, the spiritual leader of all Islam, was rolled into a carpet and trampled to death by horses so that his royal blood would not touch the ground. The psychological weight of this news is crushing. It is as if Rome, Paris, and New York were wiped off the map in a single week. Now the dust cloud on the horizon is moving toward Egypt. Were bought and sold in the markets of the Black Sea, trained from boyhood in the art of death, and who rose to seize the throne of their masters. They are the Mamluks. And in the rocky valleys of Galilee, they are about to set a trap that will change the course of human history. This is the Battle of Ain Jalut, the day the unstoppable force hit the immovable object. To understand the sheer desperation of this moment, we must look at the terrifying momentum of the Mongol Empire. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongols had perfected the art of warfare. They were faster, more disciplined, and more ruthless than any army on earth. They did not just defeat enemies. They annihilated them psychologically. By 1260, the grandson of Genghis, Hulagu Khan, was the Ilkhan of Persia. His mission was to bring the chaotic Middle East to heel. His army was a technological marvel of the age, equipped with heavy siege engines, Chinese engineers, and the deadly composite bow that could pierce armor at 300 yards. When Hulagu marched on Aleppo and Damascus, the local rulers didn't just surrender. They prostrated themselves in terror. It seemed that resistance was suicide. The Mongols had a simple foreign policy: submit and pay tribute or die. There was no middle ground. The fear they projected was so potent that cities would sometimes surrender to a single Mongol scout. However, history often turns on the smallest of hinges. Just as the Mongols were preparing to invade Egypt, a messenger arrived from the east. The great Khan Manji was dead. Tradition dictated that the Mongol princes return to the steppe to decide the succession. Hulagu, a man who respected the laws of his people, took the bulk of his massive army and rode east, leaving behind a holding force of about 10,000 to 20,000 men. Historical estimates vary, but it was a fraction of the main host. He placed this force under the command of his most trusted general, Kitbuka. Kitbuka was an Nestorian Christian, a warrior of immense skill and arrogance. He looked at the map and saw only one remaining target: Egypt. He believed that even a skeleton crew of Mongols was superior to the entire Mamluk army. He had reasons to be confident. The Mamluks were politically fractured, prone to assassinating their own sultans, and viewed by many as usurpers. But Kitbuka underestimated the man sitting on the throne in Cairo. Sultan Saif ad-Din Qutuz was not a man to be trifled with. A former slave, he had risen through the ranks by virtue of his sheer competence and ruthlessness. He knew that the Mamluk factions, especially his rival, the fearsome Baybars, hated him. But he also knew that if they didn't unite, they would all be dead. The inciting incident came in the form of a letter. 4 Mongol envoys arrived in Cairo bearing a message from Hulagu. The words were designed to freeze the blood. "We have destroyed your ancestors. We have conquered vast lands. Resistance is futile. We are the soldiers of God on earth. He who seeks our protection will be safe. He who resists will perish." In any other era, a ruler might have tried to negotiate. Qutuz did not. He ordered the 4 envoys to be sliced in half at the waist. He then took their severed heads and nailed them to the Zuwayla Gate in Cairo. It was an act of supreme defiance. It was a message that said, "We are not afraid of your monsters. Come and get us." Qutuz then did something extraordinary. He emptied the treasury. He confiscated the wealth of the rich princes to pay for the army. He gave a speech that brought seasoned killers to tears, crying out, "Oh, Islam! Indeed, I will go alone to fight the Tatars." He shamed the squabbling Mamluk emirs into line. But Qutuz knew that courage alone would not stop the Mongols. He needed a strategy. He needed a place where the Mongol cavalry could not use their greatest asset, their mobility. He chose a place in Palestine called Ain Jalut, the spring of Goliath. It is a poetic setting. Just as David slew the giant Goliath in these lands millennia before, the Mamluks hoped to slay the Mongol giant. The geography was perfect. The Jezreel Valley is bordered by the Gilboa Mountains and the Galilean Highlands. It is a funnel. Qutuz and his general, Baybars, devised a plan that was incredibly risky. They would use the Mongols' own favorite tactic against them, the feigned retreat. The Mamluks marched out of Egypt, crossing the Sinai Desert in the scorching heat of summer. They entered Palestine, brushing aside small Mongol garrisons. On September 3, 1260, they arrived at the springs. Qutuz hid the bulk of his army in the highlands, concealed by the trees and the terrain. In the valley floor, he placed a vanguard led by Baybars. Baybars was a force of nature atoll, fair-skinned Kipchak Turk with a cataract in one eye, known for his volatile temper and unmatched skill with a sword. His job was to be the bait. At dawn, the Mongols arrived. Kitbuka, eager for a fight, saw Baybar's force in the valley. To him, it looked like the entire Mamluk army. He didn't wait to scout the tree line. He didn't wait for his infantry. He ordered a full cavalry charge. The ground shook as thousands of Mongol heavy cavalry thundered forward. The Mamluks, however, were not typical militia. They were professional soldiers who trained constantly. They were heavily armored, riding swift Arabian horses, and they were masters of the lance and the sword. Baybars met the charge. The clash was deafening, the sound of steel on steel, the screaming of horses, the clouds of dust obscuring the sun. For hours, Baybars and his vanguard fought a desperate holding action. They would charge, strike, and then pull back, drawing the Mongols deeper and deeper into the valley. Finally, Baybars signaled the full retreat. His men turned their horses and fled up the valley. Kitbuka, sensing victory, ordered a general pursuit. The Mongols broke formation, galloping wildly, their eyes fixed on the backs of the fleeing enemy. They passed the narrow point of the valley. The trap snapped shut. From the hills on both sides, Mamluk war drums began to beat. The sound echoed off the canyon walls, a terrifying rhythm that signaled doom. Qutuz gave the signal. The main Mamluk army, fresh and rested, emerged from the trees. The Mongols were stunned. Suddenly, they were surrounded on 3 sides. They were not chasing a routed enemy. They were walking into a slaughterhouse. But the Mongols were the best soldiers in the world for a reason. They did not panic. Even surrounded, they fought with a ferocity that terrified the Mamluks. Kitbuka rallied his men, turning them to face the new threat. The Mongol archers, firing with machine gun speed, unleashed a storm of arrows that darkened the sky. The Mamluk left wing began to crumble under the pressure. The Mongols, fighting like trapped wolves, were on the verge of breaking out of the encirclement. If they broke the left wing, they could roll up the Mamluk line and turn the ambush into a defeat. This was the moment history held its breath. Sultan Qutuz, watching from a high point, saw his lines wavering. He realized that orders were not enough. He needed to show them. He ripped off his helmet, throwing it violently to the ground so that his face was visible to all his men. He drew his sword and screamed, Wa Islama! Wa Islama! Oh my Islam! He charged alone into the thick of the fighting. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated heroism. Seeing their Sultan risking his life, the Mamluk soldiers rallied. The shame of letting their leader fight alone, combined with the fear of what would happen if they lost, galvanized them. They surged forward, closing the gap. The battle turned into a chaotic melee. In the tight confines of the valley, the Mongol horse archers couldn't maneuver. They were forced into close-quarters combat, where the heavier Mamluk armor and weaponry had the advantage. The Mamluks carried maces designed to smash through helmets and bones. Kitbuka was urged to flee. His subordinates saw that the battle was lost, but the Mongol general refused. He shouted, "If I die here, tell the Khan that I did not retreat." He continued to fight until his horse was shot out from under him. He was captured, dragged before Qutuz in chains. The dialogue between them is legendary. Qutuz looked at the bound general and mocked him for his arrogance. Kitbuka, defiant to the end, replied, "Do not pride yourself on this victory. When the news of my death reaches Hulagu Khan, the ocean of his wrath will boil over, and from Azerbaijan to the gates of Egypt, the land will be trampled by Mongol hooves." Qutuz ordered him beheaded. The Mongol army was not just defeated. It was exterminated. Those who fled were hunted down by the local villagers. For the first time in history, a Mongol imperial army had been crushed in open battle, and crucially, the Mongols would never return to avenge it effectively. The spell was broken. The myth of Mongol invincibility, which had paralyzed the world for 40 years, died in the dust of Ain Jalut. The consequences of this day are almost impossible to overstate. If the Mamluks had failed, there was nothing standing between the Mongols and North Africa. They would have swept into Egypt, burning Cairo. They likely would have continued across the Maghreb to Morocco, and from there, the Strait of Gibraltar is only 9 miles wide. Europe, still recovering from the Dark Ages, would have been open to invasion from the south. By stopping the Mongols, the Mamluks saved the last stronghold of Islamic civilization. They preserved the libraries, the scholars, and the architecture of Cairo. They ensured that the knowledge of the ancient world preserved by Islamic scholars would survive to eventually spark the Renaissance in Europe. But the story has a tragic, almost Shakespearean coda. Qutuz, the savior of the Middle East, did not live to enjoy his glory. On the march back to Cairo, while hunting in the desert, he was approached by Baybars. Baybars felt that he had been denied his reward for the victory. He wanted the governorship of Aleppo. Qutuz had refused. In a conspiracy as brutal as it was swift, Baybars and a group of emirs surrounded the Sultan. Baybars struck the first blow. The man who had defeated the Mongol Empire was stabbed to death by his own brothers-in-arms, mere weeks after his greatest triumph. Baybars rode into Cairo not as a general, but as the new Sultan. He would go on to become the greatest ruler of the Mamluk dynasty, a man who would finish the job of expelling the Crusaders and holding the Mongols at the Euphrates River. Ain Jalut stands as a testament to the idea that no force is truly invincible. It teaches us that history is not determined by fate, but by the choices of individuals in moments of extreme crisis. It was a victory won by a trap, by a gamble, and by the desperate courage of men who had no other choice but to win or die. The Mongols would remain a power for centuries, but their dream of a universal world empire died that September afternoon in Galilee. The tide had turned. The world would not be trampled under the hooves of the horse lords. As you look at the map of the modern Middle East, realize that the borders, the cultures, and the very existence of the nations there today were secured in the span of a few hours in a hot, dusty valley in 1260. If you want to uncover more pivotal moments where the fate of civilizations hung by a thread, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell. We are dedicated to bringing you the history that shaped our world, told without compromise. Until next time.